Okay, good morning. All right, as I'm sure you've all finished the first assignment in Unit 4, it's time to start the second assignment. If you've not finished the first assignment, can I please impress on you the urgency of doing that and that the deadline has whizzed by. Okay. Right, so the first question on your lips is, Steve, where's the second assignment? And the second assignment is on the Moodle. So here's your Moodle page for Unit 4, Applied Commercial and Quality Principles in Engineering. And we scroll down and we scroll down and we scroll down and we scroll down. Now, where could it possibly be? Not there. Is it there? It is there. Okay, let's see what we've got. Okay, we've got the assignment. Yeah! We've got things to remember. That might be worth reading. We'll have a look at that in just a moment. We've got hidden, direct, and indirect costs. So we'll need to find out what those are. We've got things on costing as well. Okay, so where to start? Let's have a look at the assignment, shall we? Oopsie daisy. So let's just preview that. Let's make it massive in it. Right, so this is for P3, P4, M2, and D2. We will be exploring activity-based costing as method to control costs and to determine if an engineering product or service is profitable. Okay, so in order to do this, you'll be answering the following questions. Why do companies control costs? Provide definitions and examples of these kind of costs. So direct, indirect, hidden, variable, semi-variable. Use the case study found below. I need a to, isn't it? Found below to produce an Excel spreadsheet which shows the initial traditional costing and overhead split, and then produce an activity-based costing, ABC. Easy as ABC. How difficult can it be? Finally, reflect. So this is obviously reflection is what's getting you up into the distinction category there. And that's the P3, P4, M2, and D2. So that's what's actually on the spec. That's what we're aiming to elicit from you to hit those grades. Okay. As always, it's on Moodle. Everything's on Moodle. Okay. Right. So the case study is this. So it's all made up, obviously. Right. So Emily started a bike shop. Started it by herself. Now has 28 members of staff, 4 salespeople. Okay, so that kind of takes us through what you need to do. So we'll come back and have a look at that and unpick that and make a little bit more sense out of it. Okay. Right. So what do we have to do to that? Where do we start? Well, what's costs? Why do we care about costs as a business? Well, costs are things that cost you money. And the more things that you pay for, the less money you have to use as profit, or the less money you have to invest in the company, or the less money you have to employ more people, or the less money you have to improve machines, or buy a new light bulb, or whatever. So all companies control costs. Yeah, if companies don't control costs, then they end up spending more than they're making, and that's not a sustainable way to do business. Why does it keep doing this? Go away. It'll ping again in about 5 minutes saying it can't remove software. Anyway, never mind. That's why companies control costs. There we are, you see? Told you. Go away. So apart from the obvious drive for profit, what decisions might be affected by a need to control costs? So things like investment in new machinery, employing new staff, where your premises are. Obviously it's going to be more more expensive to have premises in London than it is in, I don't know, Carlisle. So these are all things that will affect the costs, and they need to control costs. What are the advantages of do the advantages of working in London outweigh the costs of do they outweigh the cost of the premises versus working in Carlisle, for example? Okay, hold on a second. Okay, so next up on this list of things to do, it says provide definitions and examples of direct costs, indirect costs, hidden costs, variable costs, semi-variable costs, fixed costs, and general administration costs. So what do all those costs mean? What's it all about? What do we understand by those? Well, fortunately for you, I've already put together a collection of websites which I think would be helpful in answering those questions. Okay, so the expectation is that you actually read some of these websites and pull together some of that information. Remember our 5 steps for 5 steps for copy and pasting. Okay, right. So that's there to get you started. I'll also run through quickly what we've got here. So direct costs are costs which are easy to measure. So, for example, that machine uses that much electricity per hour. That's a direct cost. Fred works on that machine, and hold on just a second. Okay. Fred works on that machine, and he works on that machine 8 hours a day. Therefore, that's a direct cost. That machine makes that product, so that's a direct cost. That's easy to measure. We pay Fred this much an hour. He works on that product 8 hours a day. So that's a direct cost that's easy to measure. So direct costs are easy to measure. And why do we need direct costs? Well, if I'm selling a product, I need to know how much I need to sell that product to be able to cover my costs of running the business. So if I make 70 things a day, I need to know how much I sell one thing for, so I can cover that cost. So I can continue to be profitable. And to do that, we need to work out, well, how does all the things I pay out, how much of all my bills needs to be covered by that one item. So if my total bills are £100 a day, and I make 100 items, then each item needs to carry a pound of my bills, and then I need to make a profit on top of that. So I might sell it for £2. Yeah. So that's a very simple example, obviously. So direct costs are easy to work out, easy to see. Okay. Indirect costs are a little bit more difficult. Indirect costs are also called overheads. Okay. So overheads are people and things that don't part of indirect costs are people and things that don't directly contribute to the product. So, for example, the design department, the HR department, the finance department, the computers that all the office staff use are not directly involved in making the product, but are necessary part of the business. So they would be indirect costs or overheads. Also with indirect costs are things like part of the electricity bill might be indirect costs. How much of the lighting and heating has to be paid for by this product, and that's quite hard to measure. So those are indirect costs or overheads. Okay, and overheads always have to be paid. Yeah, the chairs that the staff sit on, the canteen. These are all overheads. The free coffee that you provide because you're a nice employer. Overheads, indirect costs. How much does that coffee cost? How much of that cost of the coffee goes on into the production of that one item, or that product? It's more difficult to say. Okay. Hidden costs. Hidden costs are a difficult one, and despite what you might read in some of those web links, hidden costs are costs which, well, clues in the name really. They're hidden. You think, well, where's all my money going? And you have to look and look and look, and then it's like, oh, right, okay. So that they're not immediately obvious. Yeah. I would argue that I think some of the websites say that staff training is a hidden cost. I would argue that that's a fairly obvious one. You book the training, you pay the money for it. You get a new machine, you're going to have to train people on it. That's not a hidden cost. That's a cost you should be thinking about. So hidden costs are costs that are harder to spot. So, for example, product A needs to go from one end of the factory to the other, and that takes half a day because Alan's busy doing this and Janet's busy doing that, and Susan only gets a chance to do it once every 3 days, and that holds up production, which means that, excuse me, so because that only happens very infrequently, that holds up production on the part, which then costs you money. But that wouldn't be an obvious cost. That would be a hidden cost. Okay. Variable costs. The cost of the heating would be variable. The cost of electricity would be variable. The cost of lighting would be variable. For example, there's other probably better examples in the websites. Semi-variable, variable. So a variable cost is a cost that can change. So cost of materials is a better example. Would be a variable cost, I guess. Could be quite variable. As we can attest to the price of toilet roll in these current times. Semi-variable, you know roughly how much it's going to be. So electricity is probably a better example of a semi-variable cost. You know roughly how much it's going to be throughout the year, but obviously it varies with your production, and it varies with the time of year. You're going to use more electricity in the winter than the summer, quite probably, or maybe use more in the summer because you've got air conditioning. But so it's kind of variable, but you know roughly what ballpark it's going to be. Fixed costs, the same every month. So rent, yeah, your rent is an example of a fixed cost. You know how much it's going to be. You know when it's coming out of the bank account. You know what you've got to cover. Okay, and general admin costs, I think is fairly obvious. It's what you pay for the admin, accounts, finance, payroll, all that good stuff, HR. Okay, so I mean there'll also be some overlap with with administration costs with overheads. Okay, so that's the first thing you've got to do. So there's some research and writing up on that. Okay, right. Now I'm going to stop recording there, and that's going to be the first lesson. So your task is to use the Moodle and obviously the rest of the internet and research and answer why do companies control costs, what decisions might be affected by need to control costs, provide definitions and examples of all those types of costs. Okay, that's your first lesson. When you've done that, open a chat to me on Teams. You can drag your Word document up there, and we'll have a chat about that. Check that you're on the right track and give feedback for any improvements. And then it's on to the next lesson, which I shall be recording shortly. Okay, So go away, costs, write it up, open a chat with me, and we'll have a look at it. Okay, thank you very much.